It is a very ancient domesticated animal and has been kept as such for at least 500 years in Europe. In the Middle Ages, it was believed that cats had magical powers to cure illness or protect against evil spirits. This belief still exists today, but not only do we know about its medical benefits, but also how to keep them healthy. We have learned much more about their behavior and now understand why they act like they do. They are intelligent animals who can be trained easily by positive reinforcement techniques, which means rewards rather than punishment. It is important to remember, though, that cats will always take advantage when given free rein. The same goes for dogs. Cats were first brought into Britain during Roman times AD 43 and again after the Norman conquests of 1066. These two events marked the beginning of our relationship with this most popular pet. During the Victorian era, there was an explosion in demand for cats because people wanted pets around the home. There was no doubt then that the domestic cat would become one of man's best friends. In the 19th century, many wealthy families owned multiple cats. These often lived together on the top floor of the house where servants could look after them. One lady I spoke to said she remembered her mother feeding the family cat from her own plate while everyone else ate off china. She even told me that sometimes the cat was fed before herself. However, if you think your cat is being spoiled too much, try reading some of the letters sent back to England by soldiers stationed in India between 1817-1819. Our men here suffer so much from fleas that they cannot sleep without having 3 or 4 cats sitting upon each side of them. And another letter dated May 1818 says, I am sure my life would be insupportable unless I had a cat. So perhaps the British Army did need their feline companionship. By the end of the 18th century, cats became fashionable amongst the aristocracy and common folk alike. When Queen Victoria married Prince Albert in 1840, he took his favorite black kitten named Jenny Jones with him to London. He later wrote to his wife saying, Jenny's getting quite fat and plump and seems happy enough. In those days, keeping a cat was considered good luck. If someone visited your house, they might leave behind a small present for the cat, usually a piece of meat tied up in string. As well as bringing good fortune, the presence of a cat meant that you were welcoming guests. And some houses had special rooms called cat lodges, which were used specifically for housing the furry visitors. Sometimes the whole house itself was known as a cat lodge, especially if it belonged to a person who enjoyed collecting rare breeds. Cat clubs began appearing all over Britain, allowing owners to meet other fanciers and exchange information. Cats were allowed indoors and out during the daytime, but must never be left alone outside overnight. Even if you let your cat go outdoors, it should wear a collar bearing your name and address. A bell attached to the collar ensured that anyone seeing the cat knew exactly where it came from. Although cats are nocturnal hunters, they may wander away in search of food, leaving their owner wondering what happened to them. To avoid any problems, the following notice appeared in local newspapers throughout the country. Notice. Any person finding a lost cat, please return it to Mrs. Smith. No. 2 Wimpole Street to Mr. Brown. No. 12 Belgrave Square, London, where it will be duly cared for until claimed. Witnessed by J. Brown. No. 12 Belgrave Square, London. Signed R. B. Seal of the Society for the Protection of Animals Liable to Make Pests of Themselves. It wasn't long before the Victorians started breeding cats purely for show purposes. Breeders paid huge sums of money to obtain pedigree cats whose appearance matched their desired breed. At the height of the craze, fancy cats commanded higher prices than racehorses. The late 19th century saw the development of the modern cat litter tray. Previously, cats had been housed in boxes filled with sand. Now new types of trays made of clay were introduced which contained absorbent materials such as sawdust. Before this invention, cats had to relieve themselves wherever they felt like it. Unfortunately, this led to unsightly messes which needed cleaning up every morning. In the early 20th century, the cat club movement flourished once more. People were encouraged to get involved in showing their cats at shows across the country. Many famous names emerged, including Lord Rosebery, Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill, Oscar Wilde, and Florence Nightingale. During the First World War, there was a shortage of supplies and people were advised not to feed their cats. Instead, they were expected to catch mice and rats which roamed the streets looking for food. Because of this, many cats turned wild and attacked humans instead. In 1917, the government passed laws forbidding people to own stray cats. Anyone caught doing so faced a fine of PS1 plus costs. After the war ended, things returned to normal and cats quickly regained their popularity. In the 1930s, the fashion for exotic cats really took hold. These included Siamese cats, Abyssinian cats, Manx cats, and Persian cats. All of these cats looked very different to ordinary tabby cats and were highly prized by collectors. The public loved them, but unfortunately they were expensive to keep. Cats were also bred for color and pattern rather than size. The most sought-after variety was the tortoiseshell cat. These cats have a white body with brown patches along the back and tail. The Second World War caused yet another change in attitudes towards cats, with many young men fighting abroad. Women found themselves short of help in the home. They tried to make up for this lack of manpower by employing female maids who were unaccustomed to handling children and animals. This resulted in several unfortunate incidents involving cats. It soon became apparent that cats were better suited to outdoor life than living indoors with strangers. For this reason, many households decided to give up keeping cats altogether. By the 1950s, there were fewer than half the number of cats compared to pre-war figures. The 1960s brought about a revival of interest in cats. The arrival of the Beatles in America in 1964 gave rise to an increased demand for cats in Britain. The band members owned cats and even had one called Stuart dressed in a bow tie. In 1968, the BBC launched a television series called Catweasel based on a popular character created in the 1860s. The program featured a talking cat puppet voiced by Peter Hawkins. In the 1970s, the cat boom reached its peak. There were now twice as many cats in Britain as there had been in the 1920s. The trend continued into the 1980s and 1990s when the average household in Britain had 2 cats. Today, the figure stands at just under 3 cats per household. The feline population in Britain has declined since the turn of the century. There are various reasons for this decline, but one major cause is the increase in the use of rodenticides. These poisons kill rodents but can harm pets and wildlife too. Another factor is the increasing concern about the spread of diseases carried by domestic cats. In recent years, the pet industry has focused its attention on dogs rather than cats. Dogs still enjoy a high level of affection and care, whereas the opposite is true of cats. Despite this, the cat remains the most popular pet in Britain.